and welcome to the Happier Marriage Podcast, a podcast for spouses longing to have a happier marriage so they can feel more connected, desired, and supported. Now, to start the show, here is your host and Sherpa, licensed marriage and family therapist and certified relationship coach, Kingsley Grant.
Thanks for joining me on the Happier Marriage Secrets podcast, the podcast where we share insights, practical tips, and strategic actions for married Christian professionals who are looking to strengthen their relationship, honor God, and ultimately have a happier marriage. And this is episode 45, and I have another powerful episode for you. And this episode is entitled, Cracking the Code, Nonverbal Communication Problems and Solutions for Happier Relationships. Yes, you heard that right. We're going to talk about how this aspect of communication has such an enormous and incredible impact on your relationship, your marriage, and why it's so critical for us to unpack this in a way so that you can know what to look for, how to navigate that, solutions you can have to bring into the relationship and ultimately have a happier marriage. Now, here's what I know, and you know this too, that communication is a critical aspect of any relationship, which I'm sure you're very much aware and have experienced yourself in your marriage, right? And also nonverbal cues can be just as essential as the words we say. And I would even go as far as using the words is more important. You have heard many times people will put this out there and say, hey, it's not so much what you say, it's what? How you say that. What they're simply saying, it's that nonverbal that comes with the words that matters most. And truly it is, because majority of your and mine communication is nonverbal. And we're going to unpack that in a few moments. Now, some people may disagree with me on that, but I hope you're not one of them. For example, some people may feel that paying attention to nonverbal cues is just too time consuming or challenging to learn. Others may argue that nonverbal communication is not as important as verbal communication, and that's why they go for the verbal, and they're saying, I like to talk things through. I want us to talk things through. But the other partner, the other spouse may say, I don't want to. And it's not because of what's been said. It's just the attitude, the tone, the behavior, the nonverbals that really gets under their skin. And I don't know if you have ever experienced that, but if you have, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So let's explore then some of these objections and see why cracking the code on nonverbal communication is so vitally important. Now, before I share that with you, I'm asking you to do what I call a spousal honor. You've heard gentleman's honor. Well, that's the same idea, but it's a spin off that. It's a spousal honor, meaning that I'm asking you to do something to show your appreciation for getting this incredible value from this podcast, all for free. And all I'm asking you to do in return is take a few minutes and leave a rating and a review on the platform on which you listen to this podcast, preferably Apple Podcast. So you'll leave a rating and a review, click those 5 stars right there, and leave a short review. I really appreciate that. It does help the show. And if you believe the show is being valuable and helping you, then I believe that's the least I could ask for you to do in return. And I hope you'll agree with that. Now, to make sure you don't miss any of the episodes, or if you have missed some of the past episodes, number 1, subscribe to the show so you don't miss any episode. You'll always be alerted. And number 2, if you have missed any of the past episodes, you can always go to happiermarriagesecrets.com and access all the past episodes of this show. Now, you're going to find some difference, and I'll kind of explain that really quickly here. And as you've seen how I open the show differently than past episodes, if you've been listening to me, and I really want to drill down deeper. I believe that I need to just express myself fully in these episodes. more than I have in the past. And I think one of those ways is to be true to my own convictions, my own heart, where I am and who I am. And so I open the show and I just make it very clear who the show is for. And so I hopefully you're going to see the difference if you listen to my past episodes than this one and going forward. Now, if this is the first time you're listening to me, let me say this. You may or may not agree with all that you'll hear. And quite frankly, I don't expect you to. Why? Because you are smart enough to figure some things out. You know quite a bit of things as far as this world is concerned because you are a professional. You are a person that's been educated. You're a person that's out there in the marketplace and can really hold your own. And so I believe that because you're that way, some things you may not disagree, you may not agree with, and it's okay. I like the very, robust conversation that can come as a result of a podcast like this one. And so I'm basically saying, if you're triggered, now, that's one of the purpose of this show. I try to be more of a contrarian because again, I'm trying to go against the flow of what things you hear often, but I'm also inserting in there some biblical aspects that may trigger you because you may not necessarily see things the way I see them through the biblical lens that I look, and also scientifically as a licensed marriage and family therapist. So you're going to hear me say some things that may trigger you, like I said, but here's what I guarantee, that we're going to do this in a very, very respectful manner, very civil manner, and I'm always going to have a way to land this show solidly and safely, so you don't have to worry about that part. And you can always communicate with me through emails or DMs on social media because I would love to hear from you, your thoughts on about this show and any other shows you hear on the Happier Marriage Podcast. Okay, happiermarriagesecrets.com. It's Happier Marriage Secrets Podcast. Now, this show is brought to you by KingsleyGrant.com. KingsleyGrant.com. And if you head over there, you will see a whole bunch of services that are offered and other things. You can also get their products, meditations, and so on. You can find at KingsleyGrant.com. And our hope is that you will be challenged, inspired, and encouraged in this episode as in every other episode. So stay tuned.
So, the big question is this. How is it possible that you have a happier marriage when you feel like you've tried everything? Your spouse isn't making an effort. You're exhausted. You feel like giving up. Or there's so much hurt that's taken place between you and your spouse. That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answers.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen of Happier Marriage World? I hope you're ready for another round of the Happier Marriage Podcast. Now, today we're discussing the topic, cracking the code, nonverbal communication problems and solutions for happier relationships. Now, just to remind you that you can also watch video episodes of topics like this one on my YouTube channel. And if you go to KingsleyGrant.com/YouTube, KingsleyGrant.com/YouTube, it'll take you right there. So that is what you need to do. And all the links I mentioned in this episode will be found in the description, that comes with this, that accompanies this episode. So make sure that when you go to my YouTube channel, though, to subscribe, hit that subscribe button. And if you like what you hear, click the like button, but make sure you subscribe to the show. Let's get the number rising. Let's get the numbers climbing. I really want you to help me to do that. And if you want to hit the notification bell to be notified of any upcoming episode, you can also do that as well right there. You can also see my YouTube shorts, which are just really short, basically summarized parts of some of my shows. And it's condensed. And so in 90 seconds or less, sometimes under 60 seconds, you can actually watch through one of my shorts on YouTube. So make sure you enjoy and just kind of, go there and just, listen to your heart's content and watch to your heart's content. And I really appreciate that. Okay. So I expect to see your name popping up. Actually, I don't see, but anyway, yes, I do. I do see your name pop up when you hit that subscribe button. So I want to see your name. I'm looking up for you. Okay. Let's get it done today. And I really appreciate that. Again, let me simply say thanks for joining me for for this episode. As you've already heard, we're talking about the topic, cracking the code, nonverbal communication problems and solutions for happier relationships. Now, what is a nonverbal cue or nonverbal communication? What is that? Now, I wanted to just give a brief description or definition so at least you know what we're talking about. This is the working definition that we are going to do in unpacking in this episode. A nonverbal cue or nonverbal communication is a form of communication that conveys meaning without the use of words, right? Which means there's never a time that we are not communicating. We are either doing it verbally or non-verbally or both, right? We're always communicating. And so the definition, the working definition we're using here is this the form of communication that conveys meaning without the use of words. Have you ever watched like a pantomime or just a mime, right? And you can see people not using words, but they're communicating through their facial language. They're communicating through with their hands and their feet. They're pointing. They're making a story you can watch and tell basically, for the most part, what it is they're saying, but there's no words coming through. That's a form of communication that people will watch and enjoy and don't have to even hear a word that's being said. Now, here are some examples of nonverbal cues or communication. Facial expressions. Have you ever seen a clown? A clown does not speak, but they make all this expression with their face. And, right. And so you're able to tell what they're experiencing, what they're feeling. And the makeup is put on in such a way that when they make those particular face, it gets exaggerated. And you've seen that, right? So that's a form of communication, facial expressions. And we see that so often in relationships. You know, having counseled and coached hundreds of couples over the past several years as a licensed marriage and family therapist and a certified relationship coach, I can tell you I've heard many times when couples come in to talk about their problems, they will say that, you know, this person will be communicating and they will say that we just don't communicate. And they'll talk about communication when I ask them to tell me what does that look like? What does that mean? And they'll talk about verbal and nonverbal. And many times it's what creates fights for them because they misread, misunderstand. Because that's one of those easy things to happen in nonverbals. And we talk more about that in a short moment. But misinterpretation and assumptions are pretty rampant because you're making things up. You're making up a story of what possibly is being communicated when no words are there. So both are important. And I find that the weight, though, is on the nonverbal. Now, I've been married for almost 4 decades, and I've experienced my own share of misinterpreting my wife's nonverbal communication. She herself have misinterpreted mine. I've made assumptions. She made assumptions. As you can imagine, almost 4 decades, we're going to have our own share. And so when I talk about topics like this, both from professional and personal, I speak with confidence. It's not a theory. It's experience both professionally and personally. So I hope you appreciate that when I bring that to you in an episode like this one. So we talk about facial expression, body posture, the way you position your body, the way you're standing is another way that you can communicate immediately what you're saying. Have you ever seen someone standing and not only their facial expression, but their fists are very tight by their side? And what comes to your mind when you see someone who have their fists tightly clenched at their side? You think of they are in a fighting posture. So a body posture, right? When people are leaning away from you or just, the body is turned a certain way. They're not turned facing you. You're also knowing they're communicating something to you at that time. Another way is gestures, where you're making certain gestures with your hand, or again, with your face as well, your body. You're making some gestures that is telling the person. For example, when it comes to children, have you ever just held up your finger when your kid is misbehaving in a public place and you may not want to necessarily get into that with them, and you just kind of raise your finger and just you're pointing a finger, right? Or you may put your finger to your lip as a shh, be quiet, right? You may just be able to also have with your or children or your husband. You may just beckon with them. You beckon to come over here, or you just use your hand. That's a gesture you're making. The fourth way of example of nonverbal is your tone of voice. I mentioned that earlier. Your tone of voice is not so much what is being said, even though I believe it's both. I personally don't believe it's not what you say, it's how you say it. I believe it's both what you say and how you say it. That's my belief. I see that too often. So I don't, somehow, divorce those from each other. They're together. I believe they're twins, right? Or they're first cousins, in communication. But the tone of voice is very important, and it can tell you, and it can make or break the relationship, and also with children, also with a pet. My dog, whenever he is actually misbehaving or doing something that I want him to stop, and I raise my voice at him, and he immediately stops and just looks up. He's almost paralyzed the moment if I raise my voice, if I catch him doing something that he's not supposed to do. And if I call him a certain way, or I look at him a certain way, or I smile and I talk and his tail is wagging, because again, tone of voice is what's communicating to him what I'm experiencing. Eye contact. I cannot tell you how important this is. It's amazing to see how many couples, and hopefully this is not you, who will say that, I'm listening, but they're actually doing everything else but listening. And they'll say, oh yeah, because they're hearing, they think they're listening. And what you're saying is, look at me. You're not paying eye contact. You're not making eye contact with me. And eye contact is so important. I think the eye is a gateway to the soul. And you can read a person and understand what's in their heart because their eyes communicate that. Is it love? Is it disdain? Is it anger? Is it, warmth or just a cold? That comes to the eyes. The eyes tells you a story. And if you look very closely, you can. And hopefully you're doing that with your own spouse, is becoming the best student of your children or your spouse, or both really. So you can use to get this idea of possibly, and then of course checking in, which I'll share with you about how to then basically these problems and what solutions you can use with nonverbal communication. Now, why is it so important then for us to crack the code and provide solutions on nonverbal communication within your marriage? Why is it so important? What difference would it make by us cracking the code and providing solutions? Well, I believe that it calls attention to the importance of nonverbal, right? So when we crack the code, it's calling attention to the importance, the weight that's placed upon nonverbal communication. Understanding nonverbal communication can help you strengthen your connection with your spouse and avoid misunderstandings. It's incredibly important when you are able to look at nonverbal communication and raise it to a level of importance in your communication, your relationship. By understanding that, it strengthens your connection. Why? Because you're going to have less misunderstandings, less need to assume certain things. Another thing is nonverbal cues can convey emotions and attitudes that words alone may not. Your body language, your facial expression, your tone, all of those are nonverbal cues we mentioned before. These can convey emotions and attitudes that just simple words alone may not. If I just said to you, if I go back to my dog and he is, say, licking his paw, like he likes to do, and just lick, and not stop until he becomes really irritated. And I would just say, Cody, stop. And I raise my voice like that. Now, imagine if I did not use a tone, that's a nonverbal tone, inflection in my voice, and I just said, Cody, stop. That's words. No tone, just a flat affect when it comes to my words. What would happen? The chance is he'll keep on licking because I did not put that authoritative punctuation behind what it is I want him to do or not do that conveys the attitude and my emotions right behind that. So by paying attention to nonverbal cues or nonverbal communication, you will get a better sense of how your spouse, your partner is feeling and respond appropriately. And I'll give you a case in a few moments, but let me go through then what are three things I want you to be aware of and be doing when it comes to nonverbal as far as solutions, right? So we know the problems, what it can cause, misunderstandings, assumptions. It can cause fights, conflicts unnecessarily. So we know the problems. So here are the solutions to that. I want to share with you three. The first one is be observant. Be observant. Pay attention to your partner's body language, especially during sensitive conversations. Just pay close attention. You're listening to what they're saying, but you're also paying attention to what their body, those cues, facial expressions. You want to pay close attention to that. Now, you're not paying close attention to judge. You're going to practice restraint from moving into judgment mode or being critical, right? Criticizing or attack mode. Because sometimes we use that and we'll say, why are you so upset? Why are you so mad? And the person will say, I'm not mad. Do you want me to show you what mad looks like? Right? So we got to be very careful. So if we're paying close attention, we're being very observant. We're just watching for the language and observing what we're seeing, taking that into consideration in how you're going to respond. I love the Bible that says in the Proverbs, a soft answer turns away wrath. So if you're watching and you're seeing your partner's body language looks like it's tensed, their facial expression is very tense and tight, their lips is very, tight looking, they're in a very, very, cryptic kind of mode. They're upset. They are probably frustrated or angry. So you're going to be observant and then respond in a soft answer, right? A soft answer means not just the words, but the tone and your own body language. So as you know, the Bible says, judge not so you won't be judged. And it says, judge only righteous judgment. So if you're going to be in a mode of observance, right, observing your partner, then you want to be able to restrain from being in judgmental or critical, right? Judgmental or critical mode, because what's going to happen is it leads to conflict. So be observant. Why? You want to lower the temperature by being very observant. Notice what you're seeing and then speak to what you're seeing. Explain, describe what you're seeing, not labeling what you're seeing. That's the whole topic of communication. Number 2, model positive nonverbals. Solution, model positive nonverbals. You want to be able to use positive body language yourself. Maintaining eye contact, nodding, smiling, leaning in. You want to have a soft answer. A soft kind of, it's not being soft. It's just really trying to come into that moment that could be conflictual and trying to bring the temperature down. You gauge that you are the one responsible, right, for yourself. And you understand the law of sowing and reaping. I believe that if you want more of that kind from your spouse, then why not start by modeling it? The Bible speaks about sowing and reaping. That's a law. So if you want the right kind of body language, you go first. You show what you want to see. So for me, I tend to smile quite a bit when I'm talking. And if I'm upset, I'm not smiling as much, obviously, right? But I try to bring that into many of my conversations. Why? Because I want to soften the mood so the person can reciprocate that. So I'm modeling that so I can get that from the people and also teach what that should look like and why it's so important and why it makes such a difference in relationship. And number 3, so we have be observant, model positive nonverbals, and number 3, practice curiosity. Practice curiosity. Now, you've heard of this curiosity kills a cat, right? Well, this is one area where that doesn't happen. Quite the opposite. When I say practice curiosity, I'm talking about practicing active listening and asking clarifying questions. Be curious enough to get clarity on what you're seeing and hearing. You want to understand the message behind the nonverbal cues. So I could ask and say, hey, to my wife, I could say, honey, or if I'm really upset, I could say, while we're talking just now, I see where you have this quizzical look on your face, or you have this, the brows are kind of knotted, right? And I'm wondering what's behind that. I'm wondering, what does that mean? Now, I could have said, why are you so upset? Why are you so upset? Why you're speaking in such an upset manner? Now, how do I know it's upset? I judged it. I labeled it. And when I called that out, I could actually create more of a conflictual situation. My wife could be very opposed to the idea that I'm judging her and placing on her something that she's not. It could be just something that's happening in her face. It could be, just a unconscious behavior that is taking place. I don't know. So by being curious, you're going to ask questions. You're going to lean in. See, the more curious you can be, the less misunderstanding and assumption that take place. And when you have less assumption and less misunderstanding, guess what? You have a better relationship. Wouldn't you? Don't you? I think you do. So I believe these 3 solutions will help you in your communication. It's a part of what cracks the code. This is what I mentioned about cracking the code of the nonverbals in your communication, in your relationship. And so I believe if you practice these 3, number 1, be observant, model positive nonverbals, practice curiosity. I believe that it will help you to have a much better relationship. Now, here's an example or a case study. Let's say that you come home from work after having one of your most challenging day, and your wife greets you at the door with a smile. Now, again, I'm using you as a husband and speaking to you as a husband, but it could be a wife. He could be speaking to you, but I just want to speak this scenario from a man's perspective. And it could be, again, it could go either way. So don't somehow kind of go, oh, here he's speaking about all this man. Please don't even go there, right? Don't go there. Let's start this over. So let's say you come home from work and having one of your most challenging day, and your wife greets you at the door with a smile and, hi, honey. And you only grunted a response and walked right by her. Like, okay, hello. Or hi, right? But you never actually acknowledged her. You didn't look at her. You didn't pay attention to her. No nonverbal communication. You walk right by with a grunt. You head straight to your office or a favorite spot in your home that you do so, maybe to finish some work or just to decompress, or maybe just to do some mindless scrolling on the internet. That may be what you went there for. Now, what just happened? Here's what just happened. Your wife, she feels hurt. She feels rejected. And she's now put in a position to think, what did I do? Why is he so mad? Why are you so mad at me? Now, all of that's unnecessary, but you put your wife in that position. Now, here's the thing. When she's thinking that you're mad at her, you're not. You know that, but she does not. Now, here's the thing. You've had a long day at work. There's no question about that. You're simply just tired. But you did not communicate that to her. You know that she did not, but she got the essence of what it is you were experiencing, right? You deflected on her. Now, if your wife had paid attention to your nonverbal cues, she would have known that you're not upset with her, or you could say you're upset or you're tired, and basically have a different response and not interpreted the moment the way she did, right? So she had a responsibility as well to not judge right away what she saw and experienced non-verbally. I mentioned that earlier. And so do you have a responsibility to communicate to her what went on, and basically request just some downtime just to decompress and whatever else you need. But at least you would now know, but you didn't do that. So one of the ways that you and your wife would need to resolve this issue before bedtime is to talk it through. And what happened is that you would need to lead this conversation. Need to lead this conversation. It's on you to lead this conversation, because you're the first thing, you're the first, let's put it this way. You made the first move. You created your wife's reaction, what she did. Now, you're not responsible for her reaction. She is, but you put her in that position. So you take the first lead in this regards, and you first need to go and apologize for your behavior. Nothing justifies that. She does not deserve that. She had nothing to do with your day being what it is. And what you just did was take it out on her in a nonverbal manner. She paid for something she had nothing to do with nonverbally. Whether you'll know it or not, or you like it or not, but that's what happened. Now, she's left to work through in her head what's going on. And I can assure you she's not thinking of what you'd like her to think. And once you take responsibility and apologize, then she would need to find a way to accept your apology and grant forgiveness. Now, again, that's what we could talk about that in a whole different episode, but that's what she would need to do. Now, I know this sounds much easier said than done. Go ahead, say it. I know it sounds much easier said. Kingsley, oh yeah, but you're probably right. But here's the thing. What's your alternative? Go to bed angry? And you know what the Bible says about that, right? Do not let the sun go down on your wrath, your anger. In other words, don't go to bed angry. For a number of reasons. But the context was you'll give the devil an opportunity, a foothold, so he could really work on your mind. You're laying there, you're not sleeping, you're going over in your head, both you and your wife, and you're going over and over in your head what happened, and you're playing it, and he's just adding other thoughts to your mind and other thoughts, and you start spiraling, and things you get more upset, and just before long, a whole new story has emerged when it had nothing to do with what just happened. I mean, she might be at that place where she ought not to be. You are at a place where you ought not to be. And of course, the sky's the limit. Now, I know that some couples, maybe you and your wife, find it difficult to communicate on things outside of work, or the kids or the weather, just those basic things. Just don't have a way to communicate. And even what I discussed just now could be challenging for some couples, but it's necessary. But I believe that if you can build up over time your communication muscles, it will help you at times like this. And one of those ways I find that help couples to build up this, what I call the communication muscles, is to be practicing over and over again, right? To practice over and over again, because practice becomes permanent. And so, maybe even on a date, for example, I mean, you've gone on a date and maybe you have spent more than half your time on your phone because there's nothing to talk about. Maybe that's what your wife have done. You both may do that. I see it so often, and I've been guilty myself on some occasions of doing that. So I know it's really an addiction sometimes, just mindless scrolling, or what am I missing out on my email or on social media, but not talking to each other about things. Why? Most time because you just don't know what else to talk about. Nothing is happening exciting in your life. Nothing beyond what you've already spoken about. And just like, do I keep on repeating the same thing already? She's heard it. He's heard it. So because I've seen and heard this so many times, I decided to come up with an idea that solves that problem. And so what I did, I created the Connect Strong conversational card deck for couples. Now, it's a deck of cards that have questions and prompts that allows you to talk about other topics other than just kids and work and weather. And you can do that on a date. You can do that at home. And it's all set up for you for that conversation. Now, you can have real conversation in fun and meaningful ways that leads to deeper connection and stronger sense of intimacy. Now, if you're interested and would like to know more about this, you can have your access to your own deck at kingsleygrant.com/cards. kingsleygrant.com/cards, and the links will be provided in the description accompanying this episode. Now, I'm currently working to get it on Amazon as of this episode, and you're able to save $10 now before they go on Amazon, because Amazon is full price. So hurry over to kingsleygrant.com/cards and get yours today. All you need to know is on that page once you go there as well. So, okay, to summarize what we talked about today and to wrap things up on the topic of cracking the code, nonverbal communication problems and solutions for happier relationships, I suggested you do these three things, right? Number one, be observant. Number two, model positive nonverbals. And number three, practice curiosity. I'd like to know your thoughts on anything we covered today from the start of the show to this point. So send me a DM on IG, on Instagram or Facebook, and through email. And the announcer will tell you how to email us, and we can respond to you. I'll respond to you myself. If you have a question or leave a comment, you can do that there as well. I'd love to hear you and how the format of the show, the flow of the show, any thoughts, any questions, any topics that you would like to see covered that I've not yet covered. So I would love to hear from you, and I look forward to doing so. So thanks again for listening. And the announcer will tell you how to get a free gift just for staying to this point. Again, all the links I mentioned today will be in the show notes that accompanies this episode. Now let's make marriages happier again. And here is the announcement.
We've come to the end of another exciting show. And if you enjoyed this podcast, 1, make sure you give this show a rating and review. 2, subscribe to the show to get all new releases. And 3, get your complimentary copy of the 5 Secrets to a Happier Marriage ebook at kingsleygrant.com/HMS ebook. Again, it's kingsleygrant.com/HMS ebook. See the link in the show notes. Do it today. Don't delay. Thanks so much for listening, and make sure you tell one other spouse about this show, or better yet, share it with them. Until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you, and make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. May he turn his face toward you and give you his peace, both now and forever.